For centuries, painters were expected to create the most detailed works portraying either religious stories, those including Jesus, the Last Supper, to the Last Judgment, or mythology, the birth of Venus, the apotheoses of Heracles, Cupid and Psyche, or the important historical events occurring at the times: the fall of Rome, the death of Socrates, Washington crossing the Delaware, the Declaration of Independence, and Napoleon crossing the Alps. If you were to stop and take a look at all these paintings, you notice they're painted with extreme perfect detail. But in the late 19th century, a group of French artists challenged that tradition by asking a question: what if a painting captured a single moment rather than a perfect reality? This is Impressionism, as rather as a super detailed painting with carefully finished scenes, Impressionists sought to capture the fleeting moments of color, light, and everyday life, fundamentally changing the direction of modern art. But let's dive in and discuss the differences of the works prior to Impressionism. Let's analyze the work of French neoclassical artist Jacques-Louis David. Let's analyze his painting, The Oath of the Heretique. David chose to depict the dramatic moment before battle when the Heretic brothers swore an oath to their father to fight for Rome, emphasizing the duty and sacrifice and patriotism of the Roman Empire at the time. Prior to Impressionism, artistic movements such as Neoclassicalism, Romanticism aimed to invoke powerful emotions to the viewer through carefully planned compositions, dramatic historical, religious, and mythological subjects, and exceptional detail. The environments of the artists were typically inside studios in which they will be focused on producing highly finished paintings with smooth brushwork and hidden brushstrokes to create the illusion of reality. Due to an artist being inside a studio, every element of the composition was carefully controlled to create a polished and idealized image capable of communicating a story. For centuries, this approach was basically the standard of art history at the time. However, by the late 19th century, a new generation of artists began to question whether art needed to portray heroic events or idealized figures at all. Instead, they became a lot more interested in capturing something a lot more intimate, capturing the effects of changing light, color, atmosphere as they experienced in everyday life. This change would become one of the most defining characteristics of the art style Impressionism. So what exactly changed? Unlike the artists before, the Impressionists were not interested in creating perfect, polished paintings of historical figures or religious or mythological figures. Instead, they chose to capture everyday life. To achieve this, Impressionist artists, after constantly being rejected, broke away from the traditions that have defined art for centuries. They often painted outdoors, a practice literally almost similar in English and called in plein air, which allowed them to observe natural light and the changing weather firsthand. Rather than hiding their brushstrokes, they left them visible, using quick, loose strokes and vibrant colors to suggest a scene rather than painting every small detail. As Gardner's art through the ages explains, the Impressionists stood in direct opposition to the polished academic art that dominated the period. Artists such as Edgar Degas abandoned the traditional subjects and techniques in order to capture what poets Charles I'm gonna butcher this, Baudelaire described as the transitory, the fugitive, and the congruent, the brief moments of everyday life that were constantly changing. Their goal, again, was not to paint every small detail. It was to capture what the human eye experiences in a single moment. Let's analyze Impression Sunrise by Claude Monet in 1872. With the overall setting being given away in the title, the overall atmosphere of the painting is pretty foggy. This technique is simply just used by the different colors used in different shades. Here in the painting we can see how it's used with the clouds in the sky as well as the boats in the distance and even the figures who are on the boats in the water. Now, loose brushstrokes are overall really common in Impressionism, as they're often used to replicate motion through figures. But however, loose brushstrokes are used here in this painting to replicate the motion of the water moving. Fun fact, the Impressionist movement actually got its name from this painting, as a art critic, Louis Leroy, actually accused this painting of being a sketch. He actually had a really weird way of saying it. He actually said, Wallpaper in its embryonic state is more finished than that seascape. I don't know how he thought of that, but I guess, man. Let's move on to the second painting. I'll just say in English. The Avenue de l'Opera, Sunlight Winter Morning, 1898, by Camille Pissarro. So, definitely out of all the lectures of this class, this is definitely one of my favorite paintings. I'm an architect major, and so seeing Haussmann style architecture is actually one of my favorite things. I absolutely love it. Here in this painting, you can see the different everyday subjects going on at the time. We also see use of linear perspective, as you can see in the far background, the illusion of distance. Here we can actually see light instead of it just being illuminated by a lighter shade of color. We can actually see the sunrise's color of the red being shown in the buildings, which I think is actually really neat and one of my favorite things about this painting. One thing to realize is that this is very early urban Paris, and Haussmann and Louis Napoleon gave Paris its new civilized attire, that the Impressionists were just going crazy on painting the same subject, but exploring the different lightings and the subjects within the scene. The overall influence of Impressionism extended far beyond the late 19th century. By challenging the traditional roles of painting, Impressionists inspired future artists to continue experimenting with new techniques and ideas. Their work paved the way for movements such as post-impressionism, Fauvism, Cubism, and the many forms of modern art. Instead of following strict artistic traditions, artists were now encouraged to explore new ways of expressing the world around them. So, in conclusion, how did the Impressionists change the purpose of painting? Rather than asking artists to create a perfect, realistic image, Impressionism encouraged them to capture a single moment as it were experienced. By focusing on light, color, and everyday life, the Impressionists transformed what simply was recording reality to expressing human perception. Their willingness to challenge the tradition forever changed the direction of art and laid the foundation for modern art as we know it today.